Hello and welcome to Morning Call for Friday. Yes, another Friday, the 17th of May, 2019. I'm Fab from Hamburg, and today is a wonderful day. Every day with a Bruce Springsteen single release is a wonderful day. He's released another song of his album, which is great. Also, if you don't like Bruce Springsteen, Sabaton finally has released the Bismarck single to streaming services, and that is great. So it's a good day all around. Good morning to you. Quite a few people in the chat, which is nice. We've been informed it's a public holiday in Denmark, so good on ya, all the Danes slacking off there. Hello, Dat Da. Thanks for the subscribe, by the way. Yeah, so let's get into the tech news. This is probably why you're here. First on the docket. Coffee. Give me a second. Approved by the Queen. Hello, good morning. Nice cup of coffee to start the day, and then immediately a gin. I approve. First on the docket. Let's try that again. Chelsea Manning back in jail, as was expected. There's a new grand jury. She refused to testify. She's back in jail. She said, "The prosecutors are deliberately placing me in an impossible position. Go to jail and face the prospect of being held in contempt again, or foregoing my principles and the strong positions that I hold dear. The latter is a far worse jail than any the government can produce." And thus, she's back in jail. Yes, the 7 of 9 says she cannot catch a break. Yeah, this whole contempt of court thing is a bit idiotic, to be honest. They should just drop that whole case. I mean, that's just silly. Assange is in enough trouble as he is in Sweden with the rape claims against him. That is far more important thing to care about than any secrets of the American government he might have divulged, and Chelsea Manning might have divulged, which were, let us remember this, videos of American soldiers shooting on civilians from a helicopter gunship, killing 2 Reuters reporters and other innocent people. Maybe you want to deliberate on that a bit, grand jury, instead of poor old Chelsea. Let her catch a break. In Huawei news, as the American president has declared a national emergency over technology problems with spying. This has been going on for weeks now. Huawei in hot water. The European members of basically the European telecommunications companies have said we are not German, and other European telecom companies have said this is bullshit. We're not for this. We need Chinese technology building our 5G infrastructure, and we don't want blanket outlawing of their technology, like in the US, where companies now cannot use legally Huawei technology if they're building stuff for the government or like public infrastructure. And the Europeans have said we are more for just transparency and control. We are not trusting the Chinese blindly, but we will let them participate and then just, check the technology, check the routers and everything, as it should be, as the American technology should be checked too. I mean, we don't want NSA, stuff in there, Five Eyes or not, and not every European country is member of the Five Eyes. We don't want that shit. So I think that's a lot more reasonable position. Meanwhile, the Chinese ambassador to the UK, Beijing's ambassador to the UK, Liu Xiaoming, has written an editorial in the Times, I think. No, in the Evening Standard, condemning Trump's move. The Register once again with the best headline: "You're on a Huawei to hell, China tells US. Will fight import tariffs, trade war to bitter end." Basically, they're saying they don't want a trade war, but if you're picking a trade war with us, we're gonna see it through to the end, which I think is a reasonable position. I think there are probably in the stronger position here, U.S. versus China. I mean, the U.S. is a big consumer of their technology, but there's also Europe, there's other continents in the world, and China is pretty much the only country manufacturing this stuff. I mean, there is, of course, Vietnam and Taiwan, but, China is the market leader here. They're building pretty much all our information technology hardware, so we'll see. Jonathan here with a very salient comment in the chat: "Who in their right mind starts a trade war with China? They clearly don't give a shit about their people." That too. Also, what like how I think Trump really thinks that he can ramp up U.S. manufacturing and build the stuff in the U.S. Because he is an idiot. Because he does not realize that the prices we pay, which people already think are high for these little phones and stuff, are, where they are, because the labor is cheap as hell over there. If you're trying to build that with people on American wages, gonna go all to hell. Not to mention the U.S. quality of building stuff sometimes. I mean, just look at Tesla. Other story here: report on that Tesla crash on the 1st of March in Delray Beach, Florida. I think I talked about that on the show. I mean, there's been so many Tesla crashes. So basically, the transport safety board or whatever there in the US has had a look at what happened. You can see the Tesla here, basically without a roof. So what happened is the driver was driving along. He engaged the autopilot, then took his hands off the wheel, which you are not supposed to do. So engaging the autopilot, 10 seconds later, the car plowed into a semi-trailer that was crossing the road. So basically, semi-trailer crossing the road. Since the driver wasn't paying any attention, the autopilot should have prevented the crash, even though, he's supposed to have the hands on the wheel. Well, the autopilot wasn't paying any attention either and plowed full speed into the semi-trailer, running under the trailer, shearing the car roof off, killing the driver. I think injuring I think the truck driver had a minor injury, but so much for the autopilot. Obviously he wasn't supposed to take his hands off the wheel, but just imagine, So it says here the driver engaged the autopilot about 10 seconds before the collision. From less than 8 seconds before the crash to the time of impact, the vehicle did not detect the driver's hands on the steering wheel. And I've said before, like, what's the use of this autopilot in air quotes, or is this the driving thing if you have to pay attention? I mean, it's a fucking automatic car, right? It probably has cruise control. Like, why do you need an autopilot if you have to have your hands on the wheel and look straight ahead? Because, I mean, in an automatic car with cruise control, that's all you need to do to drive the fucking car. You might as well drive the fucking car. And if you're building in a feature like that, what do you think will happen? People will take their hands off the wheel. He was probably scratching his nuts, or like trying to read a paper, or digging for coffee, or something in his bag, or writing a text message. And, you know, I mean, if the fucking thing can't recognize a fucking semi-trailer crossing the road, what the hell are you building it for? That's a scene from Smokey and the Bandit, says Crickle. It is, actually. I think it's a scene from many an 80s movie. Autopilot's a stupid name. Enhanced cruise control would fit the functionality better. Yeah, I don't think it's officially called Autopilot, just because of that reason. But, like, I mean, again, if you have to have your hands on the wheel, you might as well steer. It's not that fucking hard. Like, what is the use case of this technology? This is like if I build a feature into a phone, right? That tells me, like, that has a little indicator that tells me you are holding the phone. It's about that useful. Like, congratulations, you keep holding the phone. You're still holding a phone. What the fuck? Yeah. So maybe American manufacturing, not all that it's cracked up to be. I don't know. There's a security vulnerability in AWDL, Apple Wireless Direct Link. You probably know this from AirDrop. Researchers from the TU Darmstadt and the Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts, have found a security vulnerability whereby, okay, you have to be in Bluetooth range. You can man in the middle connection, and you can exchange files, which you could probably use to put malware on the phone. Although you won't be running it on the iPhone just from the way it works. You have what do you got? A malicious file that's not going to get executed, but you can also do denial of service, and you can track stuff. Either way, it's not good. Oh, one thing I didn't look up before the show, if there's actually a security update. Has Apple fixed this? I don't know. But AWDL is also used in the NAN standard, Golem is saying, which is from the Wi-Fi Alliance, which is used on Android. So it could also affect Android phones, which is interesting. Thought AWLD was a proprietary protocol. Yes, updates to iOS 12.3 and macOS 10.14.5 fixed this. So that's good. That is good. Intel also fixed a few vulnerabilities that weren't zombie load. So there's vulnerabilities in UEFI, BIOS, in its management engine, which is always a very scary thing. That's the thing that basically does things in the processor without even the operating system knowing, that only Intel has access to. That's fucking scary. You know, you're talking about Huawei. Intel management engine is an actual problem, if you ask me. And also in Linux graphics drivers from Intel, so for built-in, chips. And there's several security vulnerabilities. Some of these are actually rated critical. So there is a lot of stuff. There's, one can be used to do, basically have remote, let me see which one that is, have remote code execution. Oh yeah, that's the management engine thing. Oh, that's lovely. Remote code execution in Intel's management engine. Not scary at all. I mean, the management engine is like it interrupts stuff that runs on the processor. It's like it does like little execution things in between, and nobody fucking knows about it. It's just Intel is the only one who has access to that. It's a fucking scary thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Just one more story here. The Register reporting on a very interesting security research paper where basically some researchers have found vulnerabilities in ILS. That is the instrument landing system. So if you're ever at an airport and you're at the end of the runway, you will recognize these antennas, that go out beyond the runway, sometimes over a road or something, and sometimes if there's buildings, it continues between the buildings. And these are, parts of the ILS, the instrument landing system. So if you can't see the runway, a pilot can land with that. And ILS, oh god, I have to look this up, has been around for ages. It's like a really old, tried and tested technology. Let me look this up. Here's Wikipedia has a nice little diagram, and so it extends beyond the runway, and then there's like basically it lists some radio frequency stuff, and you can land a plane just by that. Oh yeah, here look, there's that's what they look like. That's actually at Hanover Airport. To live there, things like this, these antennas. That's the ILS, and the pilot has like a little display, basically where he keeps horizontal and vertical orientation of the plane, and has to keep that in like a crosshairs. And if he does that, he will be guided right towards the runway. So when was this invented? That's the thing I wanted to look up. Do they have that here? Because it's bloody old. Tests of the ILS system began in 1929 in the United States. Wow. The Luftwaffe in the Second World War apparently had a precursor system. That's just bloody interesting. Anyway, they have found out that you can manipulate this, although they're saying this can probably not be used to crash a plane, because obviously this is not an automatic system like the fucking Tesla thing. This is basically a pilot guiding the plane in, and even if there's zero visibility, there's some just some common sense the pilot applies. There's also the air traffic control, which tracks the plane by radar, and it's not as easy as. And what's that Die Hard movie where they basically, don't they manipulate ILS? I think they manipulate ILS and then basically crash planes. Basically set the ground level somewhere else and crash the plane. It's not that easy, but they're saying this is a concern because obviously ILS is used all over the world. It's heavily used, heavily relied upon, and you could just do denial of service attacks. Basically, you could just mess with the ILS, the airport will detect that, and then they'll have to basically shut your transmitter down. Basically, how they do is they send either a stronger radio signal than the one that ILS is emitting, which I guess you'd need a pretty beefy antenna for, because that's a pretty beefy transmitter. Or you could just mess with the signal, like send other stuff, signals in frequencies around that, and just like confuse the receiving end. Either way, pretty interesting. Also, there are other systems, as the register points out. There's the microwave landing system, MLS, the transponder landing system, TLS, the ground-based augmentation landing system, GLS, and the Joint Precision Approach and Landing System, JPALS. I love that. That's great. JPALS. That definitely has the best name. But still interesting. Also, I like the way obviously they couldn't test this in real life on a real airport because it is, it is illegal to do that. So they basically tested this. They got the technology, but they can't. You can't go and and do that. I mean, it's illegal. You can't test that in real life. Also, you might actually endanger planes. So what they did is really interesting. They used X-Plane 11, which is a great flight simulator. My flight simulator of choice. I love X-Plane. It's a great thing. I got into it back in the day when I was gaming on Linux, and it has a Linux version. And it's very realistic. It's certified for flight training. Actually, there's a version that is certified for flight training, and so yeah, apparently the attacks were tested with commercial available software to find radio equipment, an attacker control unit, a laptop running Ubuntu with 4 sub-modules, including a spoofing zone detector, offset algorithm, blah, 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 a commercial aviation-grade handheld navigation receiver, and the X-Plane 11 flight simulator. To avoid injuries and remain within the law which prohibits open-air transmissions of ILS signals. That's several $1,000s in gear, but Ranganathan, one of the security researchers, said the necessary tech could be had for $600 or $700. Generating a signal that's powerful enough to have an effect on avionics system at 5,000 feet might be a problem, he said, but that's easy enough to achieve with a few car batteries. Okay. Well, interesting. So here's a video. I'm doing that in X-Plane 11. Oh god, that just wants me to use X-Plane again. Holy hell. Yeah, the handheld receiver there. They even have some, you can see there's some aviation geeks. They do have like control equipment. Joysticks and rudders and stuff. And they're basically flying ILS and then demonstrating, flying an ILS landing, and then demonstrating the spoofing attacks, which is look at that setup. That's pretty crazy. Man, I love that you can just that's the cool thing about X-Plane. You can interface a lot of stuff with it. It has lots of APIs and stuff you can mod into it, because people are building their own controllers and control surfaces and stuff. So they obviously, using it. And as you can see, they're landing used based on ILS, and the planes just landing next to the runway, which in X-Plane doesn't look particularly scary. And then they're doing that in foggy, and then you can see as a pilot you can't see it anymore. But of course you would have, at this point you'd have the tower going, well, okay, you're doing ILS landing there, you're not aligned with the runway, you probably want to wave that off. By the way, yesterday I was running yesterday, and I live really close to the airport, and they're currently doing the main runway. A new maintenance on the main runway, so they're all landing on our runway. So they're coming in pretty much over my flat, and I was just running along the Ulster, and I saw this plane obviously waving off a landing. I've never seen that before here in Hamburg. Basically gear down, basically coming down and then just taking off to the side. That was pretty interesting. Anyway, that's it for me for today. That's all of the tech news. I will be back for you next Thursday, I'm guessing. I have some stuff to do at the beginning of the week. I'll have to, I'm heading down or up into the, old stomping grounds, Western Germany, where my parents are, and I'll be there for a few days, and I'll write some stories and stuff, and then I'll be back, and I'll do the next show on Thursday, I'm guessing. And now I have to prepare because I'll be off pretty soon. There is a Article 13 upload filter demonstration in Hamburg today. They're not giving up. and I need to prep a little bit. I'll be reporting on that. Anyway, I hope you have a great weekend. There's definitely some music to be had now that you can listen to. Some great stuff that came out, and yeah, just hang out there. And if you're in Denmark, it's already the weekend. You know that's a bonus. Anyway, I'll see you next week. Until then, remember, just keep your hands on the wheel, using an autopilot or not. Just keep your hands on the wheel at all times. That's just so much safer. Anyway, goodbye. See you next week.